Story 1. At 47, I was resigned to a life alone and quite content with it, as I had made it this long without ever truly being in love. About a month after I stopped dating, I met this person. We have been best friends since the moment we met. I knew it within the first week. We have an innate chemistry that cannot be created. It's been 3 years, and I will marry her this August. Story 2. The first time I ate pizza, she took off the pepperoni, bacon, and sausage and put them on my slice. I thought to myself, I could eat pizza with her for the rest of my life. She only likes cheese pizza. Story 3. When I first got to know him, we were friends for a year, started dating, and here we are 29 years later, celebrating 25 years of marriage. Story 4. We had been together for about 2 years when we got very intoxicated late at night at a park. He tripped over the edge of the path and fell into some bushes. I remember thinking as I helped him out, I'm really going to marry this guy. I don't know why, but that moment made me realize that I wanted to marry him. When I finally got him out of the bushes and back on his feet, he had a handful of small wildflowers for me and helped decorate my hair with them. We are celebrating 16 years together in September and have a 19-month-old who loves to play with all the flowers his dad brings home for me. Story 5. First date. We took a walk around the state capitol after dinner, just chatting away, and out of nowhere it started pouring. We ran to his truck, completely soaking wet, and we burst out laughing when we got in. I wanted a lifetime of his laughter in my life. We have been together for 9 years and married for 7, with 2 beautiful children. Story 6. Oh, I have a good one. My boyfriend of 3 months didn't have a car when I was expected to travel for 2 weeks for work. I had a bunny rabbit and a pet bird, and I couldn't find anyone to take care of them while I was gone. My family wouldn't help, and the friends who usually assisted were out of town or busy. I was especially worried because my bird, a Greek chikana, was very aggressive and would attack anyone with painful bites. My bunny was an angel, but my bird? Yikes. Anyway, my boyfriend offered to stay in my apartment and take care of my pets if he could use my car while I was gone. I thought this was great. Now I didn't have to pay for airport parking either. I asked if he was really okay with my bird, and he scoffed at the challenge. I did not expect this to go well, but I was desperate. Yes, it required a lot of trust for such a young relationship, but again, I was desperate. I figured he would dump me after this. He dropped me off at the airport, and after a long, uncomfortable day of travel and frustrating work, I received a text from him. I fully expected it to be about the bird attacking him. Nope. It was a selfie of him with a cocky grin and the bird on his shoulder. Your bird likes Wu-Tang Clan. Anyway, we'll be married 10 years in August. And we still have the bird. Story 7. I had an awful argument with my father, and he told me to never contact him again. I felt like I was nothing to him. I was devastated and crying so hard in the car that I could barely see. I worried that my partner at the time would think this was too crazy and leave me. I cried even harder at that thought. We had both pulled over on the side of the road, driving separate cars. He walked up to me, pulled me into a big hug, and said, I always knew you had a rocky relationship with your father. There was no judgment, no piling on to a difficult situation. He was just there with me, allowing me to feel all my emotions. I knew if he could stand by me through one of my lowest moments, he would stand by me through anything. We will be married for 6 years in September and together for 10 years total. Story 8. We met on Bumble and clicked immediately. He is as unique and eccentric as I am. When he barely knew me, he accompanied me to put my cat to sleep. He cried as hard as I did. We were supposed to go on a date that day, so it was technically our first date. I just knew. I had never really seen my dad cry, and witnessing a man be so vulnerable with his emotions and love so early in a relationship made me fall hard for him. To this day, I love how in touch he is with his emotions and that he's not afraid to cry in front of anyone. He has such a gentle soul and a kind heart. He embodies the qualities of a real man, which I didn't get to see growing up. He was life-changing for me. We have been together 6 years, going on 7, and married for almost a year now. This man has moved heaven and earth for me. He is the man I dreamed of as a little girl, the man I wanted and needed as a teenager, and the man I deserved when I became an adult. I had been in love once before him, but it was not reciprocated, and it remains the worst pain I have ever felt. Then I met my husband. To love deeply and be loved back deeply is a whole other world entirely. I had finally met someone I could love without the fear of rejection. The night I met him is the night I became the wealthiest woman alive. Story 9. After dating for a few months, we were sitting next to each other, and I tried to sneak my arm around her. She saw it, grabbed my arm, made a growling noise, and bit it. Afterward, she still wanted my arm around her. It seems she just wanted to bite it first. We have been married for 16 years and have 4 kids. Story 10. When she told me I was her best friend and that she didn't want a life with anyone else, someone else came along after 10 years. Story 11. I love sharing this. My wife and I met on a dating app. She was 4 states away. We matched and immediately talked for hours. Most women on dating apps couldn't hold a conversation, but my wife loves chatting. It was the moment we shared our childhood experiences. Both of us dealt with molestation, abuse, difficult parenting, and religious extremism. Once we connected, that was it. She was mine and I was hers. To this day, I've never met a single person who is as loving, kind, understanding, and respectful as she is. This woman is a saint, deserving of admiration. I could never ask for a more perfect partner. She is my world, and I would do anything for her. Story 12. He was truly the best person in my life. He cared about my happiness and wanted the best for me, telling me the truth even if it hurt. He truly cared about my future. He never tried to make me feel bad and listened to me while I spoke. I was not used to that. I felt comfortable discussing anything without judgment, and he never simply nodded. He provided full responses. It was the first time I felt truly heard and understood, to the point that I even asked him if we should get married. Story 13. I had a crush on him 10 years ago in high school. He saw me at a concert 5 years ago, and we started flirting. We're celebrating our anniversary tomorrow and have a 2-month-old baby whom we named after the band we saw. Story 14. While dating, there were many things she did that hurt me and almost led me to give up on our relationship. However, after I returned from basic training, she had completely changed. When I questioned her about it, she said, "I couldn't keep doing the things I was doing and hurting you unless I wanted to lose you. And I don't want to lose you." It was a complete turnaround. Everything I had ever told her had hurt me, but she transformed. We have now been married for 4 years, and despite having our differences from time to time, she is my best friend, and I am so happy to have her as my wife. Story 15. In all seriousness, the moment I saw her, she had an armful of chickens, her hair was a bit messy, and she had the warmest smile I had ever seen. I immediately thought, that's my wife. Story 16. Never a moment. Just a continuous realization that I never wanted to date anyone else. Our first date was 10 years ago. Story 17. I will say our first date was wonderful. Normally, I am pretty shy and awkward, struggling to figure out what to say and how to connect with new people I meet. It was worse when I was still an anxious 19-year-old. However, I never had that problem with him. I never experienced that feeling of overthinking what to say. We spent 2 hours at a restaurant and then went on a 4-hour walk, and I just didn't stop talking the whole time. I don't know if I've ever clicked with someone that fast before. The moment I actually knew I wanted to marry him is a bit personal. But here's the censored version. He made me a lovely breakfast the first morning I stayed at his place. Scrambled eggs, lox bagels, and orange juice. Then we became intimate, and he was not small while I was inexperienced, and something absolutely mortifying happened. I think I was in shock. He jumped into action, had everything cleaned before I could blink, got us both in the shower, and held me, telling me it was okay while I was shaking and on the verge of crying. My ex would have probably screamed at me. I feel like a lot of guys probably would have ghosted me. We had only been dating for about a month. But he was apologizing to me because he felt it was his fault, never made me feel less than, and saved what could have been the single most embarrassing moment of my life. That night, I called one of my best friends to laugh it off, and he said, "Girl, I swear you better marry him. And I sure did. Story 18. The moment I saw her on the hospital bed getting an ultrasound that confirmed her stage 3 breast cancer, I knew I was going to be with her. However, seeing the fear and pain in her eyes, I realized I wanted to make her my wife and family. There was no way I would let her fight this battle without me. Unfortunately, 2 years later, she is now terminal. I do not regret a single second of being her husband. Story 19. I was pushed by someone at a party, and the guy I had a crush on did not appreciate it. He chased the person out of the house, and that individual managed to escape through the fence and tried to hold it shut behind him. It was a 6-foot wooden fence, and my crush was a little drunk. So instead of attempting to climb it, he summoned the strength of his long blonde hair and tore a part of the fence open to reach that person. It might be unconventional, but it was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. I knew right then that I wanted to be with him forever, whether he liked it or not. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, so that's exciting. To clarify, my crush broke his own fence. He wasn't damaging someone else's property. Story 20. The moment I first met her, I knew she was the one. We have been together for 30 years, married for 28, and still blissfully happy. Story 21. We were friends for a while and started dating. After a few months, we had a big fight. I was so mad at him and couldn't let it go. Then I realized he was the first man I ever cared enough about to fight for. That was the moment I knew I loved him and was in it for the long haul. Story 22. I just wanted to say some of these stories are so wholesome. I met my now wife on a dating app. First, she wanted to meet up and just hang out. At the time, I did not want to, as I was trying to figure out if I wanted friendship or a relationship. A year before we met, I had gotten out of a relationship. She went on another date and told me about it. We had conversations and so on. One day, she asked again to meet up. Her ex was living with her as he was struggling to find a place, and she felt bad about it. I said that as soon as he moved out, we could arrange a date. She told him to leave by that same weekend. We had our first date on my birthday. She didn't have a lot of money at the time, but still got me a little treat with a candle. I planned our date with a candlelit dinner, got milkshakes and champagne glasses as neither of us really drink, and ordered KFC because I thought it would be funny to have it with a candlelit dinner and a movie. She then surprised me multiple times after with thoughtful gestures. One time, she transformed our entire room into a pillow fort with fans, pillows, and blankets. She got us snacks and moved the TV so we could watch movies and play some video games. I remember feeling that she puts as much, if not more, into this relationship than I do. I don't exactly remember when I felt it. I just knew I wanted to marry her. Just being next to her makes me feel calm. The way we need to sleep next to one another, otherwise the other sleeps poorly. We have only been married for 6 months now, but I am eager for our future together. We want to try for a family, and I hope we can. Story 23. I don't really recall a specific moment with my exes. However, with my fiancée, I knew within an hour of being around her that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. Story 24. After dating for a short while, I had already thought about it. While having breakfast, the topic of wedding food came up. She said, I would serve pizza at my wedding, and I replied, that's always been my plan too. If I get married, I will definitely have pizza. I knew then that we would have pizza at our wedding, and we did 6.5 years ago. Story 25. 5 days after I met him, his friend suggested that I propose. So I did 3 weeks later and married 4 days after that. Story 26. On our first date, we were involved in an accident when someone crashed into our car, which was totaled. He did not even look at his vehicle. His first reaction was to ensure I was okay. He spoke calmly to the officers and others involved in the incident. It was a BMW, his first car, and he loved it. His reaction revealed everything I needed to know about him as a person. Story 27. My mom told me that the best decision she ever made was breaking off her engagement after spending a weekend with her best friend and realizing that, as good as her fiancé was, it would be a mistake not to marry the person she enjoyed spending time with the most. One day, Sometime between another of our endless thought-provoking conversations and one of our extremely silly games, I realized she was the best friend I could ever ask for and the person I never get tired of being with. 10 years later, that's more true than ever. Another significant factor in realizing this relationship had potential was after our first real fight. The arguments in my previous serious relationships had ranged from somewhat to very toxic for many reasons. But this time, we communicated our feelings clearly and worked through them, maintaining respect for each other the whole time. All credit goes to her for showing me that arguments are shared obstacles to overcome, not zero-sum games to be won. Story 28. During our third date, I had a massive migraine and had to cancel our dinner plans. Instead of getting upset, he showed up at my door with soup, crackers, and a cold compress. He sat quietly in my dark living room to keep me company. We have been married for 12 years now. Story 29. I got injured and then re-injured. I have been incredibly emotional while trying to get better. Anything makes me cry. He takes care of me with gentleness and kindness that helps me see how much he loves me. I now know I can fully trust him to be a good partner. I don't see the slightest bit of hesitation in his eyes when I cry that I may never fully recover. And he promises that it's not a burden for him to help me. He stays strong and hopeful about my recovery when I can't, and it makes me appreciate and love him in a deeper way. Story 30. When he quit his job on my 21st birthday to take me out because my family had been unkind to me all day and I was upset. We were together for 23 years, married for 19 years and 15 days when he died of a heart attack 6 years ago. Story 31. We met at a football tournament and decided to meet a few months later in my hometown. On the day she was supposed to visit, I crashed my motorcycle. I broke my femur, crushed my kneecap, developed compartment syndrome in my calf, and sustained minor injuries to my lungs and spleen. My mother had to call her and tell her not to board the train as I was undergoing surgery in the emergency room. She maintained phone contact throughout my recovery, visiting me and taking me for walks in a wheelchair about 3 months after the accident. One particular moment that really sealed my feelings for her was when we were reducing my morphine medication. That's when I began to feel pain in my non-broken leg, as the compartment syndrome slowly deteriorated my other calf. After the surgery to address it, the pain persisted, which was not what I had expected. I asked the doctor on duty what that meant, and he checked my medical records. He returned and said, "Normally, we open all valves in the leg to ensure there is no bleeding, but in your case, it seems they only open 3 out of 4 valves. Most likely, the pain comes from the last valve that is still bleeding and is causing further damage." Since I was only 2 days post-surgery, I asked, "Can we just remove the stitches and correct it? What does this mean?" He replied, "No, it's too late now. Either it will heal on its own or it will turn into chronic pain." Then he concluded, "I have to continue my rounds," and left me there. I was 22 years old and trapped in that hospital bed, unable to walk and barely able to sit up without pain. As my thoughts spiraled, I lay there crying, feeling the unfairness of the situation. Then my phone rang. It was my now wife checking on me. I broke down, crying uncontrollably, and she became a bit uncomfortable, considering we had only met for a few hours at that point. She asked if she had called at a bad time, but between sobs, I assured her that she had called at the exact right moment. In my moment of need, she was there. She has been my rock in many stormy seas and is genuinely the best person I have ever met. I am grateful that she is the mother of my children, and I hope we will grow old together, reflecting proudly on the life we have shared. Story 32. Weird story. There was a major deadly natural disaster after we had been dating for 3 years. From the moment it happened, I did not think of him for a couple of hours. Then someone said, "I saw him, and he's okay." And I realized my mind had completely blocked the idea that he might be hurt or dead. No phones, no way to get to various places. My mind was protecting me. When I figured out that my subconscious was going to those lengths, I realized it was significant. Story 33. I flew from Los Angeles to Boston to take her on our first date. She was based in Los Angeles, but work had her traveling around the country. I didn't want to wait a month for her to get back. We had been talking for a few weeks, and I needed to make a bold move. In the most confident and terrifying way, I casually asked her out to dinner on Friday, and she said yes. We went to a modest sushi restaurant, as she didn't want me to spend too much since I flew out last minute. Afterwards, we shared our first kiss outside, and melting snow fell on the back of my neck. I knew she was the one. Next Friday, we will celebrate our 10th anniversary and have two amazing children. Story 34. I'm a guy. When she told me that if I didn't, she was moving on. After many years and a few kids, I realized I made the right choice. It's worth noting that she is attractive, slightly older than I, and motivated. Story 35. The moment he stayed with me through my worst days after an accident that left me bedridden for months, and when I completely lost interest in my lifelong plan of marrying a girl, I realized the depth of his support. I am a bisexual man, in case that needed clarification. Story 36. When she was with me during my dad's passing, it was a long 20-day hospital stay. He had a few strokes and was totally unresponsive for a long time. I did what he asked, and she helped me understand it was okay and that I was doing the right thing. She is a medical doctor, but she wasn't his. Story 37. We both aren't concerned about having an actual wedding, which we have discussed, but he has calmed my chaos without even realizing it. There is something about his calm demeanor and his ability to handle situations that has helped me more than he will ever know. He is incredibly creative, hardworking, and positive. I would be very happy to be engaged and remain engaged. That would be enough for me. I would be perfectly content with that. Story 38. Before I even knew her name, I was at a teen club in the late 1980s and saw her dancing behind a shadow screen. As soon as she came out from behind it, I told the guy I was talking to, "I'm going to marry her." He laughed, but it turns out he knew her sister, who was always there with her. So he introduced us, and when she asked for my last name, I told her. She laughed and said, "No, really?" I replied, "No, really." 36 years later, with two grown children and two wonderful grandsons, they all have the last name she originally laughed at. But there were many problems along the way. Mistakes were made on both sides. A few years back, we both decided that divorce was the best choice for us. Life happened, and a personal event led us to return to counseling with a more open mind. We are both very grateful now that we did. Story 39. The night I got engaged to my current husband, I first met with my mom to express my concerns that things were moving so fast with my then boyfriend. We met in March, started exclusively dating in June, were engaged by the end of June, and married at the beginning of September. 6 months from meeting to getting married. She looked at me and said, "Well, you always knew it would go fast." I was getting ready to bring out a calendar for you two to pick a date. Her reassurance was what I needed to accept that I was ready to marry him. We've been together for 12 years now. Story 40. A few minutes into our first date, I mentioned that my favorite movie is Harvey. Most people under 70 may not know this film. He said it is one of his favorites too, and we connected through our shared love of classic movies and, of course, Jimmy Stewart. 10 years later, we have a beautiful dog named Harvey. Story 41. I snuck up behind her while she was concentrating on an aquarium of crabs outside a restaurant. I grabbed her and went, "Rawr!" After jumping a couple of feet in the air, she started laughing at me for laughing at her. When she didn't kill me, I knew. Story 42. We had been dating for a couple of months when I went shooting with a few friends, and she joined us. It was the first time she had come shooting with me, and I had no idea what her experience with guns was, aside from some recreational shooting. We had set out some tannerite at 300 yards. I had stopped shooting to let my friends try their hands at a distance they didn't usually engage. We watched them miss while teasing them as they shot with some rifles and a couple of scoped bolt-action guns, without making any hits. She picked up my rifle but didn't grab a magazine. Instead, she picked up a single 7.62 by 39 cartridge, shoved the butt of the rifle against her thigh, pulled back the bolt with her right hand, slipped the round in with her left, let it snap shut, brought it up, let it fly, and hit the tannerite. That's my wife. That's when I knew. Story 43. He started playing Aerials by System of a Down while doodling on his guitar. He also cleaned up my mess and drove me home after I got food poisoning. Story 44. Within about a month or two after dating him, I knew I would say yes if he asked. Not only was he one of the most wonderful people I had ever met, but he also initiated conversations about beliefs, values, and dreams early on, so we knew we were on the same trajectory and had shared goals. He proposed a year after we started dating. This year will be our 7th year of marriage, and we have 2 darling children. Somehow, he is even more wonderful now than when I met him, and I love him with all my heart. Story 45. A message came in on a dark and stormy night in May 2003. "Hello. I love your profile," she said. I looked at her profile picture and could not deny that she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. I almost couldn't believe it. We chatted, going from drunken nonsense to stimulating, soul-touching words. I ended up driving 130 miles to Tucson and meeting her in person 12 days later. The moment I laid eyes on her, we both knew that I was in love with her. The connection we had was real. We spent the next 5 years together. However, both of us became distracted, as we were still relatively young and maturing. We ended up being apart for about 5 years, and I was a total disaster. One day, I made the choice to go and get her and bring her home. The connection was more powerful than ever. Within 10 days, I decided that I was going to marry her and spend the rest of my life loving her. She was enthusiastic about it. Here we are in our 12th year of marriage. Very good. I guess I decided to marry her during the time apart. Story 46. I was 19, and he was 23. I knew within a week, and we married 1.5 years later. We are still married after 38 years. When you know. Story 47. First date. I was 47 when I met a girl who made me realize my romantic life was not over, even though she couldn't be with me. I then went on a journey looking for love. I made a few wrong turns, but by chance I met the one. Felt like putting on an old jacket. Everything fit perfectly. I knew then and even spoke to my dad, telling him I thought I had met my new wife. Story 48. This is my favorite story. It requires a little scene setting. We worked at the same company and saw each other occasionally socially, as we were both friends with another coworker. We were both in long-term relationships with other people. Long story short, over the next few years, we both moved away and ended up near each other again. I reached out after my ex and I broke up because I needed a friend. A year later, we started dating, and a couple of months in, he planned a surprise weekend away. On the way to the hotel, we drove past a used bookstore I had mentioned once in passing that I wanted to go to. It's really big but 5 hours away. I got super excited and asked if he would mind if I went there sometime that weekend, and he told me that was the whole reason we were there. Apparently, he thought I was exaggerating when I said I could spend hours in a bookstore, and he very patiently wandered around while I looked at books. At one point, I was sitting on the floor with a couple of piles of books around me, and he came over to check on me and just kind of laughed. I almost said, "I love you," for the first time 2 months in. I just knew he was the one. Story 49. 2 weeks in, we took a trip to watch a Major League Baseball game featuring both our favorite teams. The way she was willing to relax, drink, and enjoy the activities I did with friends impressed me. She fell asleep on my shoulder on the way home, and I knew she was the one after that day and moment. We have been together for 7 years and married for 4 as of August. Story 50. We talked online for a while and eventually decided to meet, as we both had never met anyone this early in a conversation. When I arrived at the location, she was with her friends. As she approached my table, I honestly couldn't believe she was a real person. I felt like the world around me blurred, and I was the only one seeing this girl. A few minutes later, we changed seats, and the sunlight illuminated her mesmerizing brown eyes. Now, almost 2 years later, she still seems unreal to me in terms of her beauty. I am working and have launched a fundraising campaign to help me marry her sooner. Story 51. Not until he asked me. I was just having fun dating this guy, but one night he took me to a more romantic restaurant than usual on the side of a mountain overlooking the city. After dinner, he told me he had a present for me, which was one of those gumball toy plastic balls with a toy ring in it. We always played with those when we passed the gumball machines. So, I excitedly looked to see what quirky toy or ring I received, only to find a beautiful heart-shaped diamond ring. I couldn't believe it was real. But then again, I remembered he did splurge on the more expensive wine earlier, so maybe. Story 52, our first date. He kissed me and the rest was history. He had been giving me a ride to work for a while just because he was nice. Then I ended up working in the deli with him. He asked, "Is that a soda in your pocket? Or are you happy to see me?" I replied, "I'm always happy to see you." He asked me out that night, and we pretended I was dating someone else. No one at work figured it out until I came in and asked if they wanted to meet Maurice after he proposed 2 weeks into our relationship. I pointed, and they were shocked. Story 53. This will resonate with some. I knew it when they accused me of lying, and I knew I was not. It is said, if you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, you know it is yours. If it does not, it never was. After 22 years, I wouldn't trade them for most of the world. Story 54. I saw them for the first time after writing with them every day for 2 years. At least I knew I wanted to marry them. I realized this 3 months later. I am now married. Story 55. I knew he was the one when I realized he was truly my best friend, accepting me without judgment for my carefree nature. My friends even joked about us getting married while we were swimming at a gathering. We had just started dating maybe a month or two at that point. They said it was the way we looked at each other. Story 56. I dated on apps and was largely unsuccessful, so I decided to focus on my happiness. A year later, I attended a regional kickball event and started flirting with a friend online and through text. We hooked up and had a good time, but she wasn't ready for a relationship and was traveling for work. We decided to meet in random cities we had never visited and enjoyed our time together. When we met in one city, I realized she would be my wife one day. We married last year after almost a decade of being together. Story 57. He was showing me Minecraft on his computer, and I have no interest in video games. However, I would have sat next to him for hours just so we could secretly hold hands under the table. We were 8 and 9. I love listening to him talk about anything. Story 58. I have more thoughts and comments about love at first sight. Marriage was never certain until it was finalized. When the notary brought out the stamp, I knew I would get married. Story 59. I woke up one morning, and she was wearing my work clothes and tying up my hands, telling me to be quiet because she was going to be late for her job at the clinic where I work. I spent 2 weeks in the closet, and when I came out, I married her. Story 60. A month before the wedding, my mother said she had paid for the caterers, so I better go through with it even though I had said I didn't want to get married anymore. I was a reluctant bride. Story 61. I was carjacked, and he rushed home to comfort me. It meant a lot to me. He made me feel safe. I knew then I would marry him. Story 62. Probably when she told me she was pregnant. For context, we had discussed having a child prior to getting married. We figured we should do the right thing and get married before our child was born when we found out. Story 63. The moment I was willing to stand up against my parents to defend her was when the rest of the world faded away, and she became the person I love and adore more than anything. Story 64. We had planned to go to the local amusement park. The night before, he said, "Let's not do that." My heart broke. I figured he wanted to go to a local park instead. It turns out he wanted to take me to the big amusement park in the next state. I had never imagined that you could just decide to go across state lines on a whim. It broadened my worldview significantly. Now we are on a trip to the other side of the country just for the fun of it. Story 65. We were living in different cities. I was driving home on a Sunday after spending the weekend with him. As I drove around a curve in the interstate, it hit me like a lightning bolt out of the blue. I'm gonna marry him. It was one of those moments that felt like a sixth sense, so matter of fact. We have been married for over 20 years and have 2 boys. It hasn't always been easy, but it has been so worth it. Story 66. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was when I realized that our chemistry made it feel like we had been lifelong friends, even though we had only known each other for a few months at that time. Story 67. The first day we met, I was 35 and he was 33. I knew that I wanted to marry him. I instantly knew he was my person. I had never felt that before. Story 68. My adult children randomly said one evening, "I'm really happy for you. You can laugh, be goofy, be intellectual, be active, be social, and be ambitious together, all in one night. Sure, I can have different friends for different roles, but it is great to be able to do them all with one person. There are many other small and significant moments too, but that was the tipping point. I'm not married yet, but I'm planning a proposal." Story 69. When he didn't judge me for eating Taco Bell in bed while watching true crime documentaries. I said, "This is my forever person." Story 70. First date. I was 47 and he was 52. We met on the dance floor and are still dancing 24 years later. He made me fall in love immediately. Story 71. I had a huge argument with my mother. I can't even remember what it was about now, as this was 4 years ago. But I remember texting him all about the fight while crying in my room alone. 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang, and it was him with a box of cupcakes of various flavors and designs, along with a giant bouquet of flowers to cheer me up. I decided then and there that I wanted to be his wife more than anything else in the world. Story 72. I met him when we were young, and after graduating college, we took some time apart to grow as adults and focus on our careers. We hadn't spoken for 8 months when we both attended a mutual friend's wedding. As I listened to the priest's homily about the true meaning of marriage, I realized there was only one person in the world I wanted as a life partner. We got back together that night, and we have been married for years, with our first child on the way. Story 73. Not me, but a guy I knew. It was the first freshman mixer. We walked into the event when my buddy stopped. We bumped into him and made a few jokes. He said, "That blonde girl, I'm going to marry her." We all chuckled and said, "Calm down, Lothario. We have finished orientation week." The guy asked her out that night. They dated for 4 years and have been married for 25 years. Together nearly 30 years. He said when he first saw her, it was like he had walked into a clear stone wall. His brain stopped, his heart stopped, breathing ceased, and he just knew. He had never even met the girl prior to that event. Story 74. We attended an end-of-year sports function together. She sat next to me, and I knew then that she was the one. Story 75. We went for a long walk on a hot July day and came across a section of hot sidewalk with many earthworms. Some were dead, but many were moving toward the nearby grass. He took the time to stop and notice, and together we moved all the live ones to the grass. I walked away from that moment knowing I wanted to marry this thoughtful, kind, and caring man. Story 76. I met her through the company I work for. She was working at a station in a foreign country, Guatemala. We exchanged social media accounts, and she would video call me at night for a short period. She invited me to visit her country, and for 4 years, I told her, next year. In December 2018, I uploaded a picture of an aircraft on social media while flying to Buenos Aires for vacation. She responded to my story. "After 4 years of waiting, you are finally going to come see me?" I explained that I was going to Argentina for vacation and that I would fly out to see her the following month. She replied, "Are you going to keep me waiting another 4 years?" saying next month. I left it at that. On February 22nd, 2019, on a spur-of-the-moment decision, I flew out to Guatemala to see her. A few days after my return, we started dating. Over the course of 5 years, I would fly out to see her using my friend's flight benefits. During our relationship, she would send me meals from Guatemala to my job, call me to wake me up for work, and share our days at night. It became clear to me that she stood out from most girls I dated, and I told myself she was the one for me. I am flying out this weekend to propose. Story 77. When she said all she wanted for an engagement ring was a plain gold band, I noticed her other attitudes and virtues. Despite coming from old money, She did not worship it. Story 78. When we first got together, a male friend of his tried to spread a rumor. The friend claimed in the middle of the main bar in our hometown that I told him I was pregnant. My dad was in the bar and called my partner, feeling upset. The next day, my partner went to the bar, found out who was talking about us, and discovered it was his friend. He then went over to the restaurant during lunch to confront him. Story 79. I haven't met him in person yet, and it's been weeks since we started talking. We video called for the first time, and when I looked into his eyes, I felt chills. I thought to myself, goodness, I found my husband. We have been married for 8 years and together for 10. Story 80. On our first date, we went to a restaurant with a large fish tank filled with tropical fish. He suggested that we let the fish decide what we would order. We assigned dishes to each fish, and if one swam past a certain object, we ordered that dish. We laughed throughout the meal, had an unforgettable dinner, and he remains one of the silliest people I know. We've been together for 8 years, and watching him make our daughter laugh every day reminds me that I made the right choice. Story 81. He was my first relationship. I entered it thinking, let's see how it goes. 3 years later, it was just as wonderful as it had been in the beginning. There wasn't a single aha moment, but the way we fit together made me feel it was the natural next step. Story 82. The moment I knew I would marry them was when we binge-watched an entire season of our favorite show in one sitting and did not even fight over the remote. That is true compatibility. Story 83. My husband was the first person I had ever been with who could make light of conflict. I don't mean that he ignores my feelings. When I'm upset, he can lift me out of it. When he's upset, he doesn't carry it around and permeate the atmosphere. If we fight, which hardly ever happens, he can let it go and not punish me for challenging him, which was not the case in my past relationships. When I learned how to feel safe when dealing with people's negative emotions, I realized that yes, I can be with this man for the rest of my life. Story 84. I think it's a collection of little moments, but one that stands out is when we were cuddling on the couch, probably scrolling on our phones. Suddenly, he sneezed and, without thinking, turned to gently sneeze into my sleeve. The look on his face afterward said, "Why did I just do that?" And we both laughed. Even if it was gross, it was such a sweet moment and showed how safe and comfortable we were with each other. Story 85. When I had a panic attack and fell on the dining room floor, he comforted me, held me, and told me that everything was going to be okay. Story 86. Our first date turned into a weekend together. I had never experienced such chemistry and comfort combined. Felt like, from the moment we locked eyes, that this was my person. We both knew from the first date that this was it. Story 87. I was transitioning from one career to another, and I finally received my big break, my first job offer in my new field. He asked to see me, but it was late, and we had work the next day. "Do you need to run any errands?" he asked. I did, to fill up my car's tank. He drove to my apartment, parked his car, and we drove my car to the gas station. He pumped the gas and then asked me if I wanted a snack from the convenience store. I said I was okay. But then he came back with too many bottles of sparkling wine from the gas station to celebrate my new chapter. "I'm so proud of you," he said, with tears welling up in his eyes and the most adoration and pride a significant other had ever looked at me with. That's when I knew. Story 88. When all my plans for the future involved her in some way, I just got married last month after over 11 years together. Story 89. Second date. We went to a Renaissance fair. She pointed out the other women with beautiful cleavage. During lunch, she talked about the National Football League. It has almost been 30 years for us. Story 90. My husband and I met when we were 20. I went to school a few hours away. We dated for several years but mutually decided to break up due to the distance. It was heartbreaking for both of us. Anytime I'd come back to town, we'd spend time together. When I finally moved back to town after graduation, we immediately started spending all our time together without missing a beat. It was as if we'd never separated. In fact, we still say we've been together 13 years, despite that break we took. We always knew we were meant to be, He's the most incredible person I've ever met. Our second child is due in 7 days. Story 91. The first time our hands touched, it felt like a shock went through my entire body, and my heart and mind said, "She's the one." Story 92. We dated in high school, broke up, and got back together, not realizing that the date we reconnected was the same as when we were in high school. Later, we discovered that both our families had grown up together, and it felt like fate. Story 93. As someone who has never really wanted kids, the first time I thought to myself, he's going to make a great dad, I realized at the same time that I wanted him to be the father of my children. Turned my world upside down. Story 94. She was just a friend at the time. I was moving home from college while working 2 jobs and finishing school, so I didn't know how I was going to pack up my apartment by the exit date. She flew in from out of state, which was planned, while I was at school and then at work that night. When I walked through the door, she was asleep on my couch with her headphones in. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, lying peacefully on her back with her feet up on the arm of the couch, her red hair spilling about her. This was a girl I had known since we were young teenagers. Our parents are good friends, but we had never dated before. I knew in that moment, standing in that doorway, that I was hopelessly in love with this angel. It was early October of that year. We were married the next year in May. We celebrate our 24th anniversary this weekend. I'm tearing up as I write this. Story 95. We had been dating for 4 years and living together for 3. When I proposed, I didn't realize I was on a countdown of 1 month. I said, "Wait, if I had waited another month, I would be off the hook." She did not find that funny. We had 39 years of marriage, but unfortunately, dementia took her away from me. Story 96. I was 5 months into college and deeply depressed. We had known each other for 2 years prior but had lost contact for a while. He messaged me unexpectedly and told me he loved me, always had, and was moving away. We have been together for 10 years. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.